Fantasy Fuel is powered by Poll Sports. Get instant fantasy football advice through real-time polls by visiting pollsports.com. Welcome to yet another episode of Tom Tuttle's Thursday Night Preview. It is now Week 5 where we have the Rams versus the Seahawks on Thursday night. Now, let's start with the Rams. They gave up 55 points to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Jameis Winston looked really good. So what the heck, right? I know we covered some of this in Fantasy Fuel's last episode when I teamed up with John Eddie Jr., but it's worth going over again because, wow, it's unreal how well the Rams defense was playing, and then all of a sudden they came up to the stellar of an offense, and the Buccaneers, that's sarcastic, by the way, if you can't tell, and they couldn't stop them. So that's a little bit concerning. I know the Buccaneers aren't the worst team in the world when it comes to the offensive side of things, but they're not supposed to be putting up 55 points against teams that we think have good defenses. So the Rams defense looked a little bit shaky against the Bucs. Now, let's talk a little bit about their offense. They did pretty good on offensive side. Well, they had to because they had to keep up with the Buccaneers, but that's a good sign when they can keep up and still have a shot to win that game. They lost by 15. They ended up having 40 points. It was 55-40. Jared Goff had 517 yards passing. That's amazing, right? That's something you're going to say, wow, about. He had 2 touchdowns. Not amazing, but good enough. The 3 interceptions, though, again, that's helping the Buccaneers stay in the game. That's something that needs to improve for Jared Goff. He's got to clean up the 3 interceptions. Todd Gurley had a good fantasy game. He didn't have a good rushing game. He only had 16 yards this last week. But 2 touchdowns and 7 receptions for 54 yards. To me, that's success. I'd like to see that continue for me to continue thinking I can start Todd Gurley every single week. Then you got Robert Woods, who had 13 receptions last week, 164 yards. You got Cooper Kupp, 9 receptions, 121 yards with 1 touchdown. Cooks, he had 6 receptions on 71 yards. All 3 of the guys are fantasy relevant. Sometimes Woods isn't fantasy relevant, but you don't know what week that's going to be. So you pretty much have to start him every time. And then you got Everett, who had a really good game, 5 receptions and a touchdown. And then we head over to the Seahawks, who won their game like I thought they would, like most people thought they would. They won 27-10 against the Cardinals this last week. Something you got to pay attention to, and I know we said this on the last podcast with me and John A. Jr., but Russell Wilson is the 3rd highest scoring quarterback in the league right now when it comes to fantasy football. So stop saying that he isn't the guy. He is the guy. He is plenty good enough to give you fantasy production, and I'm just sick and tired of people being down on him. I don't think it's worthy. He's not worthy of having that kind of a what's the word for it? Just people bashing on him all the time. Now they're certainly not bashing Russell Wilson. Nobody's actually doing that, but they're just down on him, and I don't agree with it. I think you have to look at how he's been, not just recently this year, but throughout the past. He has been in the top 5 several times when it comes to fantasy football, and last year he wasn't. So people see that and they go, oh no, that's not good. Well, guess what? Right now, after 4 weeks, he's the number 3 quarterback in the league. All right, so then you got Chris Carson, who actually had a pretty good week this week, as opposed to the last week where he had a stinker, like 5 points. That's not good. But this last week he had a really good week at 20-some points, and he had 104 yards rushing, 4 receptions for 41 yards. That's very serviceable. You can definitely get away with Carson doing that. Then you got Lockett, who only had 4 receptions for 51 yards. John Brown, 3 receptions, 50 yards, and Metcalf was disappointing yet again with only 1 reception for 6 yards. But then you got this guy named Will Dissly. And I know we talked about him plenty of times. But 7 receptions, 57 yards, 1 touchdown, amazing numbers out of him. And I really like where he's headed. Right now, to me, it's Lockett, John Brown, and Dissly. That's the guys you got to look at. All right, so let's look at this Thursday night. You got the Rams against the Seahawks. Here's what I expect out of Jared Goff and out of Carson Wentz. I expect that both of them should be startable if you have them on your team. Because, once again, Russell Wilson, very consistent. He can do it. Jared Goff can throw the ball a lot, and I expect this game to be pretty high scoring. I think Russell Wilson Russell Wilson is going to go against these Rams, and he's going to put up a lot of points. I expect Lockett to have a great day. I expect Dissly to have a tremendous day, really, and I think Brown will be fine. I think Metcalf could. This could be a big week for him. If the Rams' defense is going to be as bad as it was against the Buccaneers, you could see a little bit out of Metcalf. To me, that's almost somebody I wouldn't mind trying on a daily fantasy lineup just to see what might happen. But again, it's Thursday night. You never know with Thursday night. Now, so like I said, I see Jared Goff. I think he's going to have a good day. I think Todd Gurley, what I really liked that they did this last week was they threw the ball to Todd Gurley a few times. 7 receptions, that's really big. Now, if Todd Gurley can improve on them 16 yards that he had last week, I want that to be better. I want to see Todd Gurley get me at least 80 yards rushing. If he can do that on top of maybe a good 7 receptions and maybe he gets a touchdown or 2 like he did this last week, that is the Todd Gurley I want to see. Let's see what happens here with this Thursday night. I expect him to be fantasy relevant. You're not going to sit him. I don't care who you are. Don't sit Todd Gurley. He's going to have a fine fantasy day, and if he doesn't, it's Thursday night. Thursday night can always snipe somebody down out of fantasy football, and you just hope it's not going to be Todd Gurley this week. Robert Woods, okay? Again, this is somebody I don't know if I can always trust that he's going to give me fantasy points, but hey, if he gives you 30 points one week, you pretty much can't sit him. And if I think the Rams are going to have a good week this week, and it's going to be somewhat high scoring, I think this could be a good game. The Rams and the Seahawks, another possibly good Thursday night game like we had last week with the Eagles and the Packers. Now, Robert Woods, 100% would start him if I have him on my team. Cooper Kupp, I'm starting him if I have him on my team, and of course I'm starting Cooks if I have him on my team as well. He's probably been the most consistent out of all 3 of them. That's why I like Cooks. I said that previously as well. Everett, tight end, I'm not seeing it. I'm not feeling it. The touchdown was nice last week. The 5 receptions was nice. I just don't see the consistency with him. I'm probably going in a different direction when it comes to tight end. Now, if you're in a pickle, yeah, you can do that. Now, on the other side, you got Dissly, so I think Dissly's going to have a really good week. Now, I'm not 100% sure who's going to win this game, but when it comes to fantasy football, nobody cares who wins the game. You just care who's giving you points. And I think it's going to be a Jared Goff and a Russell Wilson heyday. It's going to be a pretty high-scoring game. That's my prediction because I just see the Rams scoring a lot of points, and I see Russell Wilson doing everything he can to keep up. And that's what's going to happen. So I think Gurley could have a really good week when it comes to catching balls again because they did this last week, and I think they're going to say, hey, we need to do that again. This worked. Even though they lost the game, they actually found a little bit on offense with Todd Gurley. All 3 of their wide receivers are going to be fine. Again, Chris Carson had a good week this last week. I think that could stay that way, but again, he's kind of been wishy-washy, and I'm not 100% sure what to do with Chris Carson. I'm probably not going to play him if I have another couple other bigger names in fantasy football this week, but I wouldn't be opposed to starting him. If I think Russell Wilson's going to have a good day, that means Carson could have a few catches. Lockett, I'm starting, no doubt. Brown, probably. And additionally, no doubt about it as well. All right, guys, that's going to do it. Remember to go to pollsports.com and get your fantasy questions answered. It's hopping every single week. This has been one of the best things to happen to fantasy football in a long time. Pollsports.com. Get your stardom and your sit 'em questions answered, because you've got so many people voting on whatever poll you might produce. Maybe you're out there, you don't know who to start. Maybe you're thinking, who should I start? Robert Woods or Tyler Lockett. You don't know who it is. So go on there, ask the question. Right now, pollsports.com, and get your questions answered. And guys, you can find us on Spotify. You can find us iHeartRadio. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please give us a little rating. We really do appreciate that. Again, guys, thank you for listening, and remember to stay fueled up this fantasy season.